Hello everyone, it's Dr. Sam Hurst and this is the 15th in our series of the October Gothic A Day Tempts the Vampires to Stay, a particularly fitting title for today's book. As usual, I'll be introducing a text, giving you some idea of why it's important, some key plot points, and also some further recommendations. Today, we're still looking at different texts from different European countries, and we'll be hopping across the channel to read a book from France. And we'll also be hopping forward in time about 100 years to 1874. Now, of course, by hopping forward in time, we're going to be missing a lot of the development of the Gothic, of detective fiction, which is very connected, and of the fantastic in France. There are a couple of different reasons for this. One of the issues is time. Also, my own area of expertise is Anglophone literature. And what I'm hoping to do with these texts picked from other countries is give that sort of insight into those cross currents of influence between British and Irish Gothic and the Gothic in Europe more broadly. Now, the text that I've chosen today is La Ville Vampire of Paul Feval, which I have in this very lovely Spanish edition. Paul Feval was a fairly prolific writer in France and is particularly well known as a writer of adventure stories and really quite key in the development of the modern detective novel. He also wrote 3 vampire novels, and I apologise for my pronunciation, Le Chevalier Ténébré, La Vampire, and La Ville Vampire. And so La Ville Vampire from 1874 is the last of these vampire books, but I've chosen it because the heroine is none other than Anne Radcliffe herself. So what's going on and why do I think this book is important? Why have I picked it? Well, because it offers a parody of the British Gothic, or more specifically, the English Gothic, from an outside perspective. So it's taking some pot shots at particular tropes of the Gothic, such as the heroine passively fainting around all the time. But it's also particularly taking a satirical eye to the English sense of self, which comes out in novels like Radcliffe's The Mysteries of Udolpho. And it takes various shots at that sort of sense of English exceptionalism. What we find in this novel is a story that isn't simply parody, but it's also a fascinating, curious, and genuinely creepy book in its own right, and provides us with a vampire which is very different than any vampire you have ever seen. I almost guarantee it. It's the story of Anne Radcliffe on the evening of her wedding, who receives letters from her childhood friends Ned Barton and Cornelia, who themselves are due to be married to each other. But something's got in the way, and the something that's got in the way are the machinations, firstly of Cornelia's guardian and his mistress, and secondly of Signor Guezzi, who we first meet as the tutor of Ned, but we later learn is a vampire. And this is a vampire, as I've mentioned, that you won't have seen before. Yes, there's some blood drinking, but the key point about the vampires in this text is that when they kill somebody, they absorb them into themselves. They can then sort of spit them back out at will as a sort of avatar, getting them to have discussions, also sending them out on tasks. And so every victim becomes an avatar of the vampire, but they don't look like the vampire necessarily, and they don't look like themselves, but they become some strange creature. So his avatars are a parrot, a dog with a human face, a bald lady, a man with no face, and a creepy child with a ring. So, strange. The other thing that's particularly interesting about these vampires is how you have to kill them. It's a little bit more normal, or it seems to be at first. It's the usual, remove the heart and burn it. But then we find that also there's something a little bit more dramatic. I won't give any secrets away, but it does end with exploding vampires. Now, Anne is accompanied by her faithful servant Grey Jack on her journey to Europe to try and rescue Cornelia and Ned. She first comes across Ned and his Irish servant Marybones. Marybones comes in for a lot of abuse from the English characters, but this is all part of that satire and parody of Englishness to some extent, because Marybones is very clearly the hero of the text. Together, teaming up with a doctor who also has a vengeance mission, and Polly Bird, one of Goetzi's first victims, they set off for the city of vampires to get rid of Signor Goetzi. Now, I won't tell you how the mission goes, but I will tell you that the novel doesn't end there. Instead, it ends in the castle of Montefalcone, where Cornelia is being held, and it involves ghosts, dungeons, and betrayal. It's a really fun read, and I can't really recommend it enough. It's pretty hilarious. And if you're interested in some more examples of a fairly comic Gothic and parody, I can recommend a couple of other reads, although I am stepping back to England at this time. So previously we talked about William Godwin and his book St. Leon, and there's a really hilarious parody called St. Godwin by Du Bois. Recommend. Also, if you're looking at a parody not simply of the Gothic but also of the Romantic period, Thomas Love Peacock's Nightmare Abbey is another great fun read. If you're wanting to read more into the French Gothic and fantastic, I can recommend Guy de Maupassant and the Hola, I'm not quite sure how to say it, which is a weird and creepy tale. So, have good adventures, enjoy yourselves, and watch out for those vampiric avatars.